work? Yeah. I think we may as well make a start, members, because I think Councillor Frank may be joining us, but we're not sure, and we have had some apologies. So welcome, everybody. I think the members do feel slightly outnumbered. I rarely see so many officers in the chamber, but that's great. It's lovely to have you all here. And welcome to this very last meeting of the Ryedale District Council Policy and Resources Committee. In my view, not everybody might agree, it's a sad occasion because in many ways this committee is being pivotal, if I can get my words out, to the operation of the council and has helped to deliver many significant projects in the district for many years. But we are where we are with the new council, so we need to press on and move forward this evening with hopefully some significant projects on this evening's agenda that I hope will enable Ryedale to leave some lasting legacy when we are no longer here anymore. But welcome very much to the meeting. Before we start, I'd also like to welcome Bernice Elgott, who is with us this evening, who is acting as our interim monitoring officer until we reach vesting day. So I think Bernice is going to say a few words.
A really short-term appointment to just step in as monitoring officer, which, as you know, is required by any council to have one by law as a statutory officer. I've been monitoring officer for Harrogate and Selby, so I kind of know North Yorkshire a bit. And if anyone needs help, assistance, advice, a word in my ear about anything, then please do contact me, and in the short time remaining, I'll do what I can to help. That's all really.
Thank you, Bernice. That's great. Thank you. Welcome on board, even though for a short time. So moving swiftly on. Apologies for absence. Do we have apologies, Lily, please?
Yes, so we've got apologies from councillors Arnold, Duncan, Dockwra and Councillor Frank and Councillor Joy Andrews, with Councillor Potter substituting.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations of interest? Councillor Potter?
Yes, I've got a prejudicial interest in item 13 about the CIC. I'm not too sure whether I can stay and answer questions if required, or whether I have to clear off for the whole lot. I shall take advice.
So,
I mean otherwise.
so don't glare at us.
I keep forgetting to turn the microphone on. Sorry, does everyone hear me?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'll get used to the system. Apologies. It's a recording.
Okay.
Everybody here
Sorry.
what I said. Well, look, just for the sake of the recording then, Nikki, shall I say that I agree with the advice given by Nigel McCloy from North Yorkshire? And then we've at least got a record of that.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item, oh, sorry, I didn't ask if anybody else had any declarations of interest. No. No? Okay. Moving on to item 4, we've got some slight confusion over minutes on this agenda, simply because the minutes for the meeting held on the 10th of November, which is what it says on the agenda front page, were not the ones that were included in the pack. It was actually the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of December. So what I'm proposing to do is to, you have the minutes now from the 10th of November on your desks. So what I'm proposing to do is that we take those as on the agenda, and then we will just take the minutes of the meeting from the 13th of December under urgent business, just so we cover everything off. So obviously all the items that were covered in the meetings, both meetings in fact, have now gone to full council, so we don't need to worry too much about them. But if you do want a couple of minutes just to look at them to see if there are any matters of accuracy anybody would like to raise. Everybody happy with those? Yep. Okay, so if we can just take, are we happy to take those by general affirmation? Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 5, the minutes of the Flood Management Working Party held on the 15th of November, which are in pages 7 to 14 of your agenda. And then you also have a second set of minutes of the Flood Management Working Party on the 24th of January. The first one is there were no recommendations from that working party, so I think we can just take those as read unless anybody has any questions on them. But the second one, there are some decisions to come to this committee from, or some recommendations from the working party to this committee that will obviously then go on to full council. So item 6 on the agenda, the minutes on the second set of minutes from the 24th of January, which came as late papers to you. There's a recommendation that an annual contribution of £5,000 is made in 22-23 from our existing revenue budget to the Yorkshire Derwent Catchment Partnership. We've done this historically for a number of years, and I think members of the working party, I mean, Councillor Potty, a member of that, recognise that the Derwent Catchment Partnership does some excellent work in the district. So I don't know if you want to make any comment on that, Councillor Potter. No. I would like to recommend that we do pass that forward for payment from the chair. Of course, yes.
Could I just ask a question? Why are we only giving 5,000?
Sorry, it's what we've always done. Others give a similar contribution across the county, and so I think it's what we've always done basically, and it's within the budget at that amount. Basically.
Yeah, so
And then obviously the second recommendation is towards a specific project that they're carrying out in the district.
I think it would be prudent actually of us to increase that in our final year. I think it would be, you know, it's something that we all know that it's a great scheme. It's been really successful, and I just think that that really should be £10,000, and I would like to propose that, please. Don't know if I've got a seconder.
I think you probably would have, but I would like to check firstly with our 151 officer to make sure we have the budget in the budget for that. You probably won't know the answer to that straight away, Anton, I'd imagine.
No, but I think what you're suggesting is if there's money not in the budget, it'd be an extra £5,000. So it's within limits in terms of requiring additional approvals. You won't need anything.
Okay. Well, yeah, Councillor Potter will second that then, and we'll put that to the vote. Unless anybody would like to comment further on it.
Well, since I mean, just since I proposed that, I do think that it really does benefit the residents of Ryedale, Pickering. I think it's been absolutely fantastic, and I've always said it, and I'll keep saying it. We have to look after Ryedale, and I think that that money should go into that project. So that's why I feel we should give them more.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, I'll just add briefly to that. I think there's, I mean, it's difficult enough getting funding for flood defences based on cost benefit analysis, which is generally the Environment Agency, and it's nigh on impossible getting decent funding for anything else outside hard defences. And the Catchment Partnership are doing some excellent work doing exactly that. And I know that they do struggle for funding. And this is for sort of revenue stuff that it's quite difficult to get hold of, as opposed to specific capital funding for projects. So, yeah, I think this is a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree. They do a lot of quite small projects, but that make a significant difference from my understanding. So yes, I'm happy to support that. So can we take this by general affirmation? Yeah. Okay. That's good. So if that could be amended and then go forward to full council. So the second recommendation was for us to make a contribution towards the Durban Catchment Partnership Brighton project, which is a project that will hopefully assist the residents of Brighton that get flooded on a fairly regular basis. It's a difficult situation in Brighton because they get water from the river as it comes down one way into the village, and they get water from the main road as it comes down the other way, and it all meets at the bottom of the hill. And so there's been various studies done about that and how that could be dealt with. They have come up with some solutions which are work further up the river to put in, I'm sure Councillor Potter will correct me if I get this wrong, but putting sort of dams. They're going to fell some trees to dam the water, to hold the water back, basically. And some other work that they want to do around a bridge on the river as well. So they've come to us to ask for a contribution to the total cost of that project, which is £120,000, and they're asking us if we will contribute 20% of the total, up to a maximum of £24,000. I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Mike. I know you've been very closely involved with this.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit. It sounds here as though we're just looking at Brighton, which is a very tiny little hamlet, but it's not. Based on the fact that if you put hard flood defences anywhere, it just protects the immediate vicinity. In this case, we're talking about putting attenuation ponds and holding the water back right in the upper catchment. So any water that you hold back there, you slow the flow, you reduce flood peaks, and it actually has an effect the whole way down the system. So not only are you protecting Brighton, it's also Slingsby and Malton and all the way down the system, maybe to a small degree, but it is actually doing that. So yeah, I would heartily recommend that this should be done in every catchment. never mind just Brighton. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Burke?
Yes, thank you. I agree that anything that we do regarding flooding has a massive impact, not just for where it's done, but in the surrounding areas. And I think that we've not got to be parochial when we think about flooding. Flooding affects many, many people and totally and utterly destroys how we live, work and play. And if we can do anything to protect our residents, that's what we need to do. I'm delighted on this last P&R that we can actually put some hard cash behind what we've been really fighting for a few years. And I think it's about time that Frighton got it. But as has been said before, it's not just for Frighton, it's all the other residents that it will help. So I'm 100% behind this.
That's great. Sounds like very positive on all fronts. I entirely support it. It's an excellent scheme, and with my long history of all things flooding related, it's anything, as Councillor Burr said, to support people who are suffering from the impacts, the long-lasting impacts of flooding is a good thing in my book. So, yeah, I'm happy to support it. So, is this another one we can take by general affirmation? No. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So, moving on, item 7 is urgent business, which I seem to rarely have anything in urgent business, but today we have, as I've already mentioned, and that is just to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of December of this committee that were accidentally missed off the agenda. So you've had a look at them. If we can take that by general affirmation, that would be good. Any comments, any thoughts on them? No, okay, that's fine. So that's those sorted out. So I think this agenda came out when there was an awful lot of other things happening, and so it's not surprising that they were missed off. But okay, so moving sharply on to Part B items, which are the matters that will be referred to Council. Item 8, the revenue and capital budget monitoring for Q3. Which is on pages 15 to 24, which I believe you will be presenting, Anton. Thank you.
Yeah, I will be. So thank you for that. This is the Q3 report, which as you'll all be accustomed to, is the normal report we do at each quarter during the year. What this is saying on the revenue budget is that we are looking that we will have an overspend, potential overspend this financial year of the figure we're declaring at the moment is £169,000. Now, there are two bits around that. Firstly, that £169,000 is an increase since both Q1 and Q2, where we were predicting a break even, and it's largely down to one-off costs that we're incurring on some premises, some health and safety related items, both here at the depot and elsewhere, some additional costs on public conveniences. And the other thing to say is that we have revised our investment income projections downwards. So we were all getting very excited. I'm not sure that's the right word about increased interest rates. Now they've stabilized a little bit. They've gone up, but not quite as much as was being predicted. So that means that our level of our ability to kind of offset some of those costs isn't quite what we thought it might be. So 169 is the figure. That also assumes that we will spend the full £500,000 we set aside for LGR costs. Now, you'll see from the report that we've committed less than 300,000 of that, and there's only a few weeks left. Now, we will incur some more costs because there will be some redundancy costs in there, but I'm giving you an indication. If we underspend by 100,000 on that, then we won't overspend in total by 169. It will be 69. So that's still a little bit fluid. The other thing to point out is that, as I've said, these are being caused by one-off costs. So they will not. We're not expecting them to continue. So we don't believe that that will create any additional burden for the new council in its new budget. They're not ongoing. So It's a cautious estimate, just to, I guess, I'm quite a cautious person, as you'd expect of your Section 151 officer. And I'm not particularly worried about it because of the one-off nature of these costs. And frankly, they're things that we had to do, and they will be covered by reserves, and it will not add to the burden that we're passing on to the new council. So that's a brief summary of the revenue budget. On the capital budget, not really much change in the sense that we won't spend all of the capital budget this year. We've known that for some time. For example, just to pick out one example, Pickering starter units is in the full budget's in there. We won't spend that this year, but it will carry forward it will carry forward into the new budget for the council, and will be earmarked for that. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anton, and thank you again for steering us very cautiously, which I think most people appreciate. And I think we are in a far better position than a lot of councils going forward into the new council. Do members have any questions for Anton? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't know whether I'm asking this at the right point, and bearing in mind that I took precious little interest in maths when I was at school, but I heard from somebody that I believe it was stated in a North Yorkshire meeting, North Yorkshire Council, that we were handing over a £2 million deficit at handing over point, and that came as a great surprise to me. And I thought, how, why, and is it? And if so, do we have a vague breakdown? Is there any truth in that story?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's in the budget. So when we set the budget this time last year, we are, as I said, we're working close to the budget. It looks like we're going to overspend, not massively, but we're going to overspend on a budget that's being propped up by £2 million of reserves, and that was a decision that we took. And that's an ongoing position. So if you look back in those papers, you'll see that 2 million gap. It's not unique. So the county council is as part of its kind of continuing council role, has been setting the budget for the new council, and it went through executive last week and will go to full council a couple of weeks' time. And that paper for the new council shows a gap in the first year of £30 million. That's for the new council. Now, of that £30 million, 12 million is new, and 18 million are kind of, if I call them, legacy deficits from all of the councils. The bulk of that 18 million, I think 11 million is coming from the county, but the rest of it's coming from a mixture from all of the districts, and we contribute to that. Our figure is 2 million, around about 2 million. Obviously, if we'd been a continuing council, we would have had to do something about that. But I think all councils were quite explicit in saying that the savings should come through the transformation of LGR. There will be savings there. So no council took the decision to start cutting in its last year ahead of that. So it's a strange, because we're handing over an ongoing. The deficit is the difference between income in and expenditure out. But we're also handing over reserves which cover it for a few years. So there is a kind of inbuilt deficit, but we're not handing over a debt, if that makes sense. The two things being different. Okay.
Thanks, Anton. Yeah, I mean, my comment on that is I think it's and I wouldn't expect Anton to comment on this, but it's a bit of political gamesmanship describing it in the way it's been described, but we'll draw a line there. Councillor Burr.
Yes, so first of all, I personally, and I'm sure on behalf of many councils, would like to thank you for all that you've done for this authority. I think since you came to this organisation, you have changed the way that we do business and the way you have presented reports, and they've made that very easy for members to be able to guide themselves round. So thank you for that. And I'm sure you will continue to do that at the new council. So you mentioned that we had a deficit, and I personally think, well, very few organisations are even breaking even, let alone in deficit. So for me, that is just part and parcel of how it all goes. And we have been diligent in the way that we have run our finances. So I am actually quite happy with that, and I feel that's a tolerance that I can live with. My question, I've got a few questions, but I would just like to, and I couldn't find it, and you'll probably say, well, it was there, but you didn't see it, Lindsay. So I appreciate that. So how much has the LGR actually cost us to date? And have we got any costs on top? What is the absolute prediction? Because I can remember we were given a sum, but I'm not sure whether we stayed within that budget or not. And I promise I have had a look through there, but I'm sure you'll guide me straight to it.
Yeah, it's of the report, it's paragraph 5.3. So the amount that we set aside was 500,000, and that came from reserve. So
I remember that.
yeah,
500.
that's 500,000. And we've spent, or rather we've committed to date 290,000. We have also agreed that any redundancy cost for the chief executive will come out of that as well, which is why I'm saying it's probably going to be nearer 400,000 rather than the 290. Whether it goes above 400,000 or not, I'm not sure. I think as each day passes, it becomes less likely that we'll commit more resources to it. So I think that will underspend, and that will bring the final position down.
Just come back there. Yeah, I think we're nearly where we are. You know, there's not long to go now, so I can't see anything, you know, popping up and surprising us. So I think that's where we're probably going to be. And I think we've talked around the 3 million deficit, and on this occasion, I do agree with Councillor Keel about the shenanigans that go on. And obviously, it was sold as it was going to be fantastic, and it was going to be a saving, and everyone was going to be better off, etc., etc. But we are giving a substantial amount of money over. And could you just remind me what is going over, please?
Yeah, so again, if you look at it's 511, the reserves. The reserves that we're estimating by the end of March will be just under 10 million. Now, around about 2.5 million of that are capital reserves. So they're committed for things like Pickering starter units and other things. And there's some set aside next year too. So we should be in a position whereby the reserves that are handed over, if you like, are somewhere above 7 million.
Thank you for that. And I think it's really, really worth us hearing that, and that being on the recording, because what I'm being asked day in and day out is how much money is going up to the new authority. And that is basically all our residents want to know. They just want to know those headline figures. And sometimes, as has been stated before, things can get a bit mixed up, and it's not really very clear. And, you know, us members, we find it really difficult sometimes to find our way around the accounts. So I think it's just really important, you know, to say that there is going to be millions going, you know, up to the new authority from this area. And I just wanted to point that out, because it's all deficit and it's all doom and gloom, and we aren't sending very much up, and, you know, we haven't probably done very well. We have done exceptionally well. As a district council, we have managed our finances. We have made sure that we had money set aside and we would carry out projects. Unfortunately, that has been cut off. We have not been able to carry out what we wanted to do in this area. And that 10 million, obviously some money is put aside, but that is going up to the authority. And I sincerely hope, and I'm sure all my colleagues hope, that we do get a big chunk of that money coming back into Ryedale.
Thank you, Councillor Burr. I think all members would echo those comments. Councillor Clark?
Just
initially, just to add to what Lindsay was saying, am I correct in saying that at least some of our deficit is because we are bringing agency staff in at the moment because it's difficult for us to get all of the employees that we need, and that will, in theory, be less of a problem when we're moving over to the new council.
Yes, so some of the overspend this year is due to some, we have spent, particularly in the street scene area, we spent some money on agency. We're hoping that because of some changes we did after the review, that will lessen in future years. But I think there's a general point. If you were to look at the Q2 report, you'll see that we are overspending on staffing still, but the overspend is coming down because we have a number of vacancies and people keep leaving. Yeah, and that's not just a Ryedale issue. That's not just a North Yorkshire issue. That's a whole country issue at the moment, and that's becoming difficult. So I think, you know, when LGR happens, I'm not here to try and go through all the LGR arguments again, but there should be a bit of an ability to work across all of North Yorkshire and help in that area, and not have to identify costly agency staff. I don't know, Margaret, if there's anything you want to say about streets. You know, I've covered it.
No, I would just reiterate what Antoine's actually said. Really.
Thank you, Anton.
Can I also ask about
Of course.
paragraph 5.5? You've got a table there. You've got inflation included in the budget for things like gas and electric, and then you've got a additional inflation risk. Is that on top of your previous? So the 38% for electric with an additional 58% would be 88%, or would it be compounded on top of that?
Yeah, so that's trying to. So obviously, when we set the budget this time last year, we were quite pessimistic about inflation. We thought at the time, and that's obviously inflation's gone through the roof, particularly on things like fuel. Everyone knows that. So the figures there are showing what we think that additional risk is doing to the budget, and therefore it's included within these figures. So you can see that extra cost of pay, electricity, etc. That's all adding to the overspend. It's being brought down by inflation the other way on income and investment income, but it's still causing a problem.
Yeah, I mean, just as a sort of general picture for anybody watching, it's quite a potential substantial increase in fuel and energy costs over the next year for, well, obviously not just for us, but you know, this is going to be for the country as a whole.
Inflation, and part of the reason for not just for the new North Yorkshire Council, but for every council, the reason budgets are not balancing is because of inflation. And Gary Fielding, you probably saw him do his presentations and on that, where if I take an example, I know where I work in health and adult services at the county. Normally we would have inflation of around about £6 million a year just on adult social care. Next year it's going to be 21 million. It's huge.
Thank you, Anton. Councillor Potter, were you? Yeah.
Yeah, just another quick question. I'm old enough to remember the last local government reform that seemed to cost a fortune, despite what anybody said. And I was just wondering, is there still a genuine commitment from the new council to quantify and quite clearly state the costs and savings of local government reform? Because I've been asking this question for probably 18 months, 2 years, and I want to know that we're really going to get hard figures.
Yes, yes, there is, and that's something that members have asked us finance officers to do on a regular basis. In fact, Gary Fielding describes it as a bit like do you remember the Blue Peter barometer? It's going to be one of those. it's going to be part of the new council's quarterly monitoring. So you'll see it going up or down, which, but yeah, there will be. Yeah.
Or the bottom. Okay, thank you, Anton. Do you have any further questions? Any further discussion on this item? It is just for noting, so. Okay, thank you. We'll move on in that case to item 9, which is delivering the council plan, which I think you're going to present, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So what I've got for you, first of all, is a report looking at the performance of the local authority over the period to September last year. So it's Q2 that we're looking at rather than sort of Q3. The main thing that I want to sort of draw people's attention to is that actually performance has remained really good across the authority. We've got 87.5% of our indicators are currently within target, and the remaining 12.5% are currently showing. It is on. Yeah. Never get that. So the other 12% of KPIs are currently within their tolerance levels. So we don't have anything that's out of target at the moment. The 3 that were showing during this period as being intolerance were % of household waste composted, % of household waste sent for reuse, recycling or composting, and residual household waste per kilogram per household. The first 2 were the result of the long dry summer that we had, and that obviously meant that composting was down, and that had a compound impact on the % of household waste that was sent for reuse, recycling and composting. So obviously that was sort of gathering all of those indicators together. And the other one was the residual household waste, which, although missed target, had shown an improvement compared to Q1. And if the trend continued, it would actually be in target for Q3. So hopeful that that one's actually moving in the right direction. Do want to highlight some good performance. So the work of the Revs and Benefits team and the planning team have all exceeded target in every single indicator that they're responsible for. So again, that's a really positive story for us to tell in terms of performance of the local authority. There are 2 indicators that I want to draw members' attentions to. The first one is number of Ryedale customers. And the reason I wanted to flag this is this has shown decrease over a number of periods. So it's one that we just track rather than having a indicator attached to it or a target attached to it. It's shown a reduction for a sort of sustained period, and we know that there's some degree of seasonality with that. So usually sort of through the colder months, you would expect to see sort of people leaving the service, either going into care or dying. But what we are seeing is that this is a sustained period of time now that we're seeing that reduction in people that are on service. The first plausible explanation we've got for this is that cost of living is having an impact, so people are voluntarily leaving the service. When we've investigated that, that doesn't appear to be the case. So what it looks like is it's actually more about sort of attracting people to the service is what's actually having the problem. So we're not getting that replenishment of people that are leaving the service. So that's sort of where our thinking is at the moment. We're going to continue to do a little bit more work around that. The other one that sort of sticks out is around the long-term empty properties. We've changed the indicator for this compared to Q1. And it was changed on the basis that it wasn't telling members the whole story as to exactly what's going on with empty properties. So previously, we've just measured this on the basis of the properties that we've had significant interventions in, so where we've actually gone in as a local authority and there's been either financial support available or there's sort of legal action that we've taken to get a property back into use where it's been sort of left to rack and ruin. We've actually changed that, so we're looking at the long-term empty properties as a whole across the district, and that means that you've actually got more visibility of the number of properties that are long-term empty, and we think that's actually going to be of more value rather than just the number that we've actually had that significant intervention in. So that's the other one that we've changed, and again we're looking to sort of map that going forward to make sure that people are more aware of exactly what's happening with those empty properties, because there's a lot of work that the team does that goes unreported as a result of that. So happy to take any questions that you've got on the indicators. Obviously, I'm not the owner for all of them. I sort of compile the results. So if I can answer the questions, I'll answer them, but otherwise I might have to come back.
That's great. Thank you, Richard. I mean, my comment is that it's just so good to see that the performance indicators have remained high and have just constantly started going up, so that we have so few now out in the sort of tolerance range. Most of them have, and particularly those that have stayed really high all along, like revs and bends. It's very reassuring to see that. It should be very reassuring for our residents to see that, especially in what has been a very difficult period for staff teams in the run up to LGR. So I think it's an excellent report, and it's very reassuring to see that. Can I just ask something about the Ryedale situation, that you've said you think it's not about the cost of living crisis, and but it's higher than drop off than we've been used to seeing. Are we doing so? I mean, this is probably not a question for you. This may be a question for Margaret, but are we doing something about that to actually publicise the scheme? Because I think it's an excellent scheme, and it's something that Ryedale does very well. I don't know if we do it, that if it happens in other parts of the county, but I think it's something that it would be very good to retain if we can. So it would be good to publicise it, just so that we can get more people signed up.
Yeah, Kerry over the last couple of years has done a great deal of work in actually doing that. Over COVID, it's been a wee bit more difficult because of the marketing of that, but she has been doing that. It is a difficult service because we're trying to cover a lot. So yeah, she's continuing to keep on doing that. And I mean, we do have it across different other districts. So again, we see that this could actually be really beneficial in the new authority as we go forward. So yeah, she will keep on kind of like doing that piece of work to try and get more people in. I think it's also a result of just COVID, whether we like it or not, and actually people being more exposed to, unfortunately, more influenza and different illnesses, because we've been in that kind of lockdown period, and obviously some of these people are quite vulnerable. So there is an element of, maybe that's why one of the reasons diet is actually increased for that. So, but we'll keep on promoting it. I mean, we really believe in the service, and yeah, taking it forward.
Okay. Right, thank you, Margaret. Members, questions? Yeah, that's Clark.
I was looking at the bottom of page 32. You've got a number of cases of homelessness. This is saying number of cases where it was successfully prevented. Do we have any data on the number of cases where it was not successfully prevented? And is this just the number that we have done in this quarter? And is there any more data available for us on that?
I can certainly answer some of that. So yeah, you're right. It's the number of households per quarter that we're looking at. So in the quarter one, I think we had 32 households that were supported. In terms of those that haven't been supported, we will have that information, but I don't have it to hand. So I'll probably have to go away and do a bit of digging and just circulate it after the meeting, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Richard. Any other questions, Councillor Burr?
It is myself.
So could I say thank you very, very much for this report, because it was really, really helpful. And I personally, and I hope our other councillors, are really proud of the achievements. And thank you to you and your team, because there's been significant work done, significant improvement, and 12.5% is really good tolerance. So I think, as I've always said, we've always been a good council, and I will completely and utterly reiterate that whenever I am asked. So also, revs and bends and planning, we did have a hiccup, and obviously we were suffering a little bit, and I'm really pleased about that. And I would like to obviously pass congratulations on to that team and wish everybody well in the future. We mentioned the dry summer, which we all suffered from horrendously, and I think that is totally acceptable of where we are within this body of the report. But one thing that I would like to talk to you about is fly tipping, because I'm quite conscious, and I don't know if other members have noticed this, that and for those who travel around quite a lot, and I do in my job, that it is becoming more and more evident wherever you go. Now, I'm not sure if this is because people panic and don't want to go to our sites and maybe pay for some things, or if it's just people are just changing their habits. I think we're quite lucky at the moment that we haven't got a significant impact at the moment, but I do feel that it's creeping up. And I do see just over our border, I do see a lot of fly tipping. So I'm thinking, well, if it's happening there, it could be happening in Ryedale. So I probably ask you the same sort of questions every time that I see you, is that have we got built-in capacity? Because I think, I don't know about anyone else, but I think that fly tipping is going to become a real problem to us. And I think if we could nip it in the bud now, or say, don't worry, if you're thinking of fly tipping, don't come to us, because I tell you what, we're going to sort you and we're going to fine you. Do you know what I mean? I think we need to send that message really loud and clear, because Ryedale is far too beautiful to have fly tipping. So I think you probably were expecting that, but
No, I think it's a great question, to be honest. And it's one that I don't have an answer to. But what I have said to people is, again, this is an opportunity for us to do the deep dives on the performance for the next time. So what I'll do is incorporate that into the Q3, and we'll give you a little bit more information as to what's happened with fly tipping, you know, sort of number of prosecutions, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we can add that to the Q3 report.
Margaret, did you want to come in on
Yeah,
this?
I was just going to say, obviously, we are an enforcement team over the last couple of years. They are taking prosecutions, so they are
Good.
fining people. So you're right, there is a slight increase in actually people fly tipping. Now, that could be for a whole load of things. It could be for the cost of living. People don't want to pay the petrol. People don't want to pay for special uplifts. So there could be. So it is, Richard said, we do need to do a deep dive on that, but please be reassured that the enforcement officers are very vigilant, and they do act, and they do compile the cases, and they will take action against and fine people for it. So we're given a very, very clear message that if it does continue to happen, that it's part of our council plan to keep the place green and clean. So basically we will take action.
We did a very good campaign not so long ago, didn't we, over the summer, about fly tipping as well. Councillor Bowie, coming back.
And I think that we personally are doing a great job. But what I think we should do is shout quite loud to say that you ain't going to get away with fly tipping here, because we're not tolerant of it. And we are putting in measures, because people fly tip if they think that they can get away with it. So that was really what my thrust of the question was about, you know, give a little bit of a warning to people, because I don't want to see what I'm seeing on the borders. I don't want to see that in Ryedale. We're far too beautiful for that.
Thank you. It is amazing what bits of fly tipping occur. You're thinking of the fridge on a picnic table in the middle of the Riverside picnic area recently, which was the effort that it must have been taken to get that fridge there is beyond me. But anyway, do we have any further questions? No. Okay, well, thank you very much, Richard. I think the next report's with you as well, but just to echo Councillor Burr's comments about the amount of work that goes into this report, but it's so worth it, because it is an excellent snapshot of what the council has done and how well we've performed. So thank you for that. And this one is just for noting. So if we move, sorry, Councillor Potter.
No, it's all right. I didn't have any questions. A couple of quick comments. In terms of fly tipping, actually I see surprisingly little around Ryedale, and I probably get around more than most people. I think one important thing is community officers, if they're out and about and this is being seen, it's being reported and it's being dealt with. And like litter, if there's a lot of litter, it produces more because people think it's acceptable or slightly more acceptable. But once you keep that fly tipping clear, it doesn't tend to proliferate in the same way. So I'm glad about that. And I'd certainly like to commend all the officers who've been involved in this. And I hope they're well aware that we are meeting our targets to such a degree. And I hope that gets fed back and that they can get a fair degree of satisfaction from that, because I think that we've been performing very well. It's a pity we're disappearing, but I hope that that performance will just continue as we carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which is another one from you, I think, Richard, the annual report for 21-22.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So second paper that I've got for you tonight is the annual report. So the first thing to say is obviously this is sort of quite late in the year, and I think that's sort of something that we need to recognise. That's largely down to the fact that it's taken a long time to produce it, and it's been through numerous iterations and formats and updates while we've got the format right. So it has taken quite a while to produce. It follows the same theme as the council plan, so it's structured around the themes of communities, economy, environment and organisation. And we've also got an overview of the council's financial position at the end of the year, so made sure we've covered sort of every base possible, really. The things that sort of just to highlight in each section. So in the economy section, we've got a focus on the ongoing solutions to tackle energy efficiency. Again, some great work that the authority's done, which has been recognised with sort of various awards. The other things to mention is around sort of the employment that we've provided for people across the district, the employment support, the various different events that we've had for job fairs and so on, to obviously encourage people back into employment or to give people the opportunities to sort of change jobs if they so wish. In the environment section, as you probably know, that there's been a lot of work around flood alleviation. We've made sure that we've covered off as much of that as we can. So we've really focused on the case studies and the good work that's been able to be delivered by the authority over the year. We've also got information in that section sort of relating to the development of a graduate who previously worked for the authority and has obviously gone on to do many great and wonderful things since then. The organisation, again, we've focused on the people aspect. So again, we've got a lot of information in there around sort of the staffing, the structure of the organisation, changes to personnel and so on. And then the community section, there's information around sort of rough sleeping, provision of hardship funds, development of the community, Connect partnership, and community grants. So there's a lot of positive work that's taken place over the 2020-21 financial year that we've really tried to cover off in the annual report. More than anything, I think it's more about just sort of being able to answer any questions that people have got. I appreciate it's quite a comprehensive document, so it's more about sort of seeing what queries and questions people have got and being able to answer them, I think.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sure people will have questions, but I mean, I'd like to say what a great report it is, because I think there's a lot of information in there, but it's in a very simple, straightforward style, which makes it very easy to digest. But it includes a huge amount of information and very valuable information. I think the case studies are excellent because they really do bring it home as to what we're doing. And yeah, I commend you for all your hard work and the team's hard work on it, because it just is a wonderful snapshot. And at this time in Ryedale's existence, it's just brilliant to see all that work that's been done in the last year. So, members, questions? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, just a comment really that in common with the previous report, I think this is really commendable. And I hope people are looking at this stuff and it's not just a report that's sitting around. But I would just like to make one correction, and that's on page 86, where at the top it says Ryedale District Council's elected members declared a climate emergency in 29, which led to the creating of the council's climate change action plan. Well, it was actually the other way around, because we created the action plan, and that was probably at the end of the council. And then we elected a new council, and we came in and did a bit of flag waving and saying we've got a climate emergency. So just the key point about a climate emergency is that declaring one means absolutely nothing unless you've got a plan to do something about it. And I'm pleased to say that we did have a plan, we have got a plan, and we were doing something about it, and we've actually achieved a fair amount. And particularly considering that 29 was unbelievably now 4 years ago. And back in those days, in the olden days, it wasn't quite as easy to get this sort of thing passed. and there were still a lot of people denying climate change. I think we've moved on quite considerably since. Anyway, thank you for all that.
Yeah. Councillor Burr?
Yes, so once again, are you the author of this? All right, whoever, but I'm sure a lot of people put this together, but they need congratulating because this actually just totally and utterly brings Ryedale just to life. It's not a set of words, it's pictures, it's people that we all recognise, that we all know, and we also like the idea that leader of or chair of P&R is keeping fit on the front page. So that was quite nice to see that we're all keeping fit. And I just think that it's really, really great to see things like this. One thing that I really wanted to ask about is because I quite like training, etc. I was just interested in the person who was on the Kickstart scheme. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that would really benefit a lot of people in Ryedale. Is that something that we do in house, or we work in partnership with somebody? I don't know who I should ask that to. The Kickstart scheme. Oh, Philip. Sorry, Philip. I didn't know it was you.
I'm not sure I knew it was me, Councillor Burr, but there you go.
They're going to make you earn your money on your last night.
They're going to be very disappointed. I can tell you. In all seriousness, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to actually answer that this evening. I'm going to have to take that away and come back to you. So I do apologise. I'm sorry
It's
to
okay.
underwhelm you with that response. I'm
It's
afraid.
okay. It's just that it was a really good. It was a really good case study, and I think it'll benefit an awful lot of people in Ryedale. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll just kind of come in. It was actually in collaboration with North Yorkshire County Council. So we were asked if we could have some people that we could actually do through Kickstart to give them the opportunity. Not everybody managed to take it up, but we were one of the ones that managed to take it up, and it was very successful. So yeah, it's a great initiative. I've got to say, between that and the graduate programme, I think that we've really done really well promoting young people and actually setting them off in a good learning kind of journey and a good opportunity for their careers.
Excellent. Thank you, Margaret. Any further questions? No. Okay, so the recommendation from Richard's report is that we recommend that it's progressed through council and it's approved for publication. So I'm happy to propose that. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Potter. We agree that by general affirmation. I think it is an excellent piece of work. Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for your work on that, along with the rest of the team. Okay, we'll move forward to item 11 now, which is the local development scheme, November 2022 to March 2023. And Jill and Rachel, is this a joint presentation, or is this Rachel with Jill chipping in occasionally? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Yes, so members, this report on the local development scheme, it's a reflection of the transition that the District Council is now in as part of local government reorganisation. We've included an Appendix 3, which tabulates what officers think are effectively the three options for the new council to consider regarding how it takes forward the review of the Ryedale plan. A lot of work has been done by both members and officers, and to get to where we are now. But there is much work still to do, and we will not be able to publish the review before vesting date. We do want to ensure that the work is taken forward, acknowledging that there are significant strategic considerations for the new council to wrestle with, and the report and the recommendation is as written. And thank you, and I'll happily take any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have questions for Rachel? It's on silence, Rachel. Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Paragraph 611 at the bottom of page 105. One of the things that we are looking at there is renewable energy opportunities. that's presumably things like solar and, well, various things. Are we able to specify that new housing has to have solar and has to have certain energy efficiency standards, things which are actually going to reduce the cost for the people who actually own those houses in the long term, as well as being good for the environment?
That is something that the new plan will have to look at. In terms of a consultation that is currently taking place in the work that we've done on key decisions, we were looking at embedding sustainable building technologies within new developments. I think perhaps, and I hope actually, that the new plan for North Yorkshire, as that develops, that's going to look more strategically at effectively where we will look at more significant, larger scale renewable and low carbon technologies. But certainly, yes, I think that the new plan will have to look at embedding more comprehensively renewable technologies in new buildings for certain.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burr.
Thank you for all your hard work. We are where we are with our plan, and as you've said, an awful lot of work has been done, not only from officers but by members. We've had some quite robust discussions about the plan, and there's various things that some councillors want, some councillors don't want. But I would just like to pick up on the solar panels in building. Is there any way, shape or form, or is there any way that we can state or somewhere that we should not be taking agricultural land to use solar panels, but yet we can build as many houses as we want, and we don't have to mandate that people would put solar panels on? You know exactly where I'm talking about and what it is, but I won't name those sites. I just wondered if there was anything coming through from government, because again, you know, you get stopped in the street as a councillor, and it's amazing how many people say this about, why don't new houses have solar panels on? Why aren't we doing this? And I know the local plan is very broad, but it is just something that does crop up quite a lot. So I don't know if you can help me a little bit with that.
Yes, Councillor Burr. So the government is currently undertaking a consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework. And one of the aspects that it's seeking to change is within one of the footnotes of the policies is to consider agricultural land productivity as effectively as a material consideration. It is currently considered as a material planning consideration within the consideration of development proposals. Now, our local plan and the Ryedale plan talks about considering the relative merits of the use of what we term best and most versatile land. It is a very significant issue that we as a nation have to wrestle with in respect of balancing the needs of finding new sources of renewable and low carbon energy supply, but also considering the use of agricultural land. It could be viewed in different ways depending on, you know, how much agricultural land is available in a given area versus its quality. I think it's fair to say that national policy is quite sort of balanced with regards to the fact that it does focus more on housing delivery. And so I think in the past there certainly has been a greater weight given to housing delivery as opposed to renewable or low carbon technologies. It remains to be seen whether that will continue. I think the very fact that it's being discussed within the National Planning Policy Framework means that the government is recognising that this is a significant issue that needs to be considered, and it will be certainly something that the new council will have to have to wrestle with, because it will be looking at how it can significantly deliver a greater number of renewable technologies across the new North Yorkshire area. In relation to going back to solar panels on new buildings, that's something that will also be looked at through the local plan in further detail. And I would think in greater detail and greater scope than we have done so far in the review of the Ryedale plan, because we'll be looking at a much bigger geography and hopefully greater opportunity to deliver more decentralized renewable energy schemes, not just standalone renewable schemes as well.
Yes, of course.
Thank you for that. That was great. Thank you. It is disappointing though that we aren't where we really should be at this moment in time, and it's obviously down to government guidance and what we are being told we can and can't do. And as officers and members, we do sometimes have our hands tied behind our back. But that was really interesting what you're saying, and I think looking to the future, that is probably what needs to be done. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Burr. Any Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll be a bit careful what I say as Chair of Planning.
Should you be speaking?
I'll try and speak in generalities. These aren't questions. I could probably ask a lot of rhetorical questions that I know the answers to. But I think members will realise that we were placed between a rock and a hard place with this review. Initially, we were limited pretty much to sites coming forward, but then as it developed, I was quite determined, as I'm sure Rachel will agree, that we expanded it a little bit more into sort of house tenures, particularly renewable energy and energy efficiency and so on. And it's always disappointing when we don't have, in my view, the backup from national policy. So let's hope that things move in that direction, because until we get firm policy, both local and national, that says to house builders, this is how you will build those houses, then we're going to be stuck with approving houses that we haven't really got much choice but to approve them, when we know they're going to need to be retrofitted within 5 or 10 years, and that's before they're even off the planning stage. In terms of renewable energy and solar panels, it's my opinion that energy security and food security are both absolutely vital and both on an equal par. And therefore, we shouldn't be using best and most vulnerable land, BMV, unless it is absolutely essential and the absolute minimum of that, because that is our food security. So again, putting solar panels on the roofs of new buildings, particularly large industrial buildings, is got to happen. So I don't think I can say too much else other than the fact that we did end up having to go with this 15-year review, which was quite bizarre in a way when we don't know, we haven't got a clue what North Yorkshire's strategy is in terms of development or local plans. The chances are I think it's hopeful that they'll manage to do their local plan for the whole of North Yorkshire within 5 years. I think it's more realistic that it's going to be 10 to 15 years. So it's vital that we carry on with this work and forget the LGR bit, and our officers just carry on as they're doing and get as much into this local plan as they possibly can that will inform how houses are built and where they're built and so on. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. It's interesting, your opening words. I'd written down here a rock and a hard place, which I think is where you've been placed as our planning officers, which is unfortunate. But I completely agree. We just need to carry on, and who knows what the new authority will do. But I think, you know, we need to just progress, and we need to sort of get this as far as we possibly can. So, so if there's no other comments from members, the recommendation on the report is that we recommend to council that the local development scheme is agreed for use and is published. So we need to, you're happy to, I'll propose that. So we have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can we take this by general affirmation? I don't think there's going to be any disagreement on this one. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So moving on to item 12. This is a report that has come about from a request from Councillor Potter, as we've already heard, about affordable housing sites in Malton. Rachel, I believe you're going to present this one as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so I thought we were supposed to have given members the original request that Councillor Potter made, and I think that's now with all the officers. I just thought it might be worth me reading out the 3 requests that were made and setting out how they have been effectively incorporated into the recommendations before you tonight. So the first recommendation is that it is proposed that the upper deck of Wentworth Street car park and the RDC owned site shown in the attached plan coloured green be submitted to Ryedale District Council's local plan review as a site for 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility. That is effectively the recommendation 1, and it's the second bullet point. The second request is that RDC requests that the new North Yorkshire Council agree to officers negotiating the purchase of the privately owned site marked on the attached plan coloured pink, which I have to say is a very, very pale pink. If any members do want me to point out which parcel of land that is, I will do that. And that is also part of effectively bringing forward a scheme of 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility in connection with the first recommendation. That is the second recommendation of the report. Effectively, the recommendations have been split into assets currently owned by the District Council and a privately owned asset. The third request is that the whole of Ryedale House is an allocation in the adopted development plan, with the principle of residential use on the site already being assessed as acceptable. It is proposed that this allocation be amended to one of 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility. And I think I just want to draw to members' attention the fact that we've had to slightly amend the wording of Councillor Potter's requests here. That's in relation primarily to the fact that in relation to request 3, where it talks about effectively submitting, or effectively it says to amend the existing allocation to 100% affordable housing. We legally can't amend a development plan. So that's why we can't follow through that specific recommendation. However, the site can be submitted as a site submission to set out the affordable tenure, i.e. 100%, or to have it as an extra care site. The report also talks in paragraph 6.5 and 6.6. It sets out some of the established policy principles within the current allocation. So if a planning application was to come forward on the site in due course for an affordable housing scheme of a fully affordable nature, we would assess what the harm is in terms of compliance with the development plan arising from a proposal of that nature. I hope that sort of clarifies, Councillor Potter, in terms of the concerns you had with the way the report was worded in terms of the recommendations versus what you'd originally suggested. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have any questions? Councillor Potter?
Just to say, I've got an amendment to the recommendations that I'll hand over to you. Do you want me to read it out? Right, okay. Number one, this is slightly different than the version on the one that was printed out that you've probably got in front of you. So number one, it's proposed that the upper deck of Wentworth Street car park and the RDC owned site shown on the attached plan coloured green be submitted to Ryedale District Council's local plan review by RDC officers as a site for 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility. Number two, RDC request that the new North Yorkshire Council agree to officers negotiating the purchase of the privately owned site marked on the attached coloured plan coloured pink as part of the site for 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility as in one above. Number three, the whole Ryedale House site is an existing allocation in the adopted development plan with the principle of residential use of the site already assessed as acceptable. It's proposed that this allocation be resubmitted by RDC officers as a site for 100% affordable housing and or an extra care facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask the question, Rachel? Obviously, you said that you couldn't amend the development plan, but can an allocation be resubmitted to it, or is that actually seen as amending or an attempt to amend?
It's a matter of process. So in terms of the wording that Councillor Potter read out there, if the current site extent is resubmitted through the plan making process to prepare the new local plan, then that's absolutely within the landowner's right to do that. So that's different. That is a different approach to that which was previously set out and gets around this issue of trying to amend an adopted development plan, which legally you can't do. You can assess material considerations, which mean that you might that would outweigh the full complement of the local plan, but the approach that Councillor Potter said there would, in essence, would get around that complexity and would allow it to be submitted. I think, but it is fair to say that in relation to the report, we talk about deliverability and developability, and Councillor Potter's absolutely right. The site is allocated and it's established in principle for residential development. The key aspect now is the consideration around whether it's deliverable, because currently it's not identified as being deliverable in our strategic housing land availability assessment. And a lot of work to establish whether a site is deliverable is background work that's done prior to the submission of the site for consideration to the local plan. We talk in the risk section of the report around the need to look at alternative locations for delivering facilities and services, and to have effectively done that work prior to having the site being capable of being effectively released for consideration into a development plan and being identified as being a realistic deliverable prospect of delivering a development site that will come forward within the plan period, as we term it, the lifetime of the development plan.
So I suppose my follow-up question to that is it possible to do that, but within the restraints you have at the moment, in the fact that we're moving to the new authority, is it practical to do that piece of work? Or are you saying the amount of background work that would be required would make it very difficult?
I think it's extremely difficult to produce a document that can be submitted now to the local planning authority, because there's a lot of background work that needs to be done. But I have taken the view, and I think this is what Councillor Potter was wanting to do, is this is a starting point, and there will be discussions taking place going forward and beyond vesting date in relation to what happens with council assets. And it won't just be Ryedale House. It could be other sites, but it's a process that needs careful consideration and a lot of evidence put together to demonstrate that the service can still be delivered, but also that the site can then be developed as well.
Thank you for that. I just want to clarify that before. So we've had an amendment. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Sorry, do you want to ask? Yes, can I ask a question?
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you for your last appraisal. That was really quite helpful. As you pointed out, we are very late in the day, and some members wanted the plan changing, and we were told that the plan was too far on. It was too late in the day to change, and obviously, people who wanted changes went with the officers, and obviously if the changes were too late in the day, the changes were too late in the day. So with respect, whilst there are merits around this, it is very, very late in the day. Vesting day is coming very, very quickly towards us. And are we now saying that we are just looking at ad hoc sites that can be popped in here, there and anywhere, and have the principal towns been looked at as well? Because we all 100% think that affordable housing is required, but is it all required in the Malton area? So I suppose my first question to you is it something that you are saying can be done now? Because this is a couple of days I've sort of had sight of this. So is that something now as a council that we're doing? That's my first question. And also, have other sites been looked at in our towns?
Well, I'm sort of representing the report from the perspective of the local planning authority. It's for the landowner of the site that's being submitted to effectively submit the site. And so I've written the report on the basis of the perspectives of and aspects that the local planning authority would need to take into account. But it's also in relation to the fact that, going back to developability and deliverability, we would need to be confident that the site can come forward. We've had over 300 sites submitted to us as part of the review of the Ryedale plan. So if we were to get additional sites coming forward, they would all be then in the mix to be considered through our effectively a sustainability appraisal process, which compares sites and relatively assesses their constraints and benefits of delivering certain development proposals. But this is very much a first step for an authority to consider or not whether it wants to release development sites. It's certainly not an end position for expecting a site to come forward as part of the plan making process. As you said, we were working on the review of the Ryedale plan. We've got it so far, but there is now going to be work done on a new local plan that will cover a much larger geography. And so we will want to continue to work on sites so we can build up a cohort of information to assess sites, but it's going to have to be viewed within a much wider strategic context. And that work is going to be years in the making.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Burr?
Yes, every single site has to go through a rigorous site assessment process. Each site has to be effectively considered in the same way. That being said, in making that assessment of sites, you have to overlay various strategic considerations which could affect ultimately how a site performs. And in terms of the Ryedale house site being identified in our existing development plan, it went through that process, and it was agreed by council that the site should be submitted. And at that point, it was looking at a relocation strategy for delivering services at the district council. And so at that point, we had sufficient information to demonstrate to an external planning inspector that the site was developable in planning terms, had no significant planning constraints, and was deliverable. Where we are now is the fact that for the last 2 years, we have not considered this site within our strategic housing land availability assessment, because we've had no indication from the council that the site is going to come forward. And in that respect, that's exactly where we are now with it.
Okay, thank you. So we've had your amendment put and it's been seconded. Councillor Potter, do you want to speak to the amendment at this stage?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, do we as a council have the right to submit land that we own in the local plan review as a development site as proposed? Assuming members agree, yes or no? And para 6.12 says we can't decline to accept site submissions. But para 4.1 says the most significant risk is that North Yorkshire Council decline to progress such proposals. So why wait and take that significant risk when RDC are the landowner and currently the sovereign authority? When North Yorkshire Council take ownership and become the sovereign authority, it'll be within their gift to reverse any such democratic decision of this council, but then they'd also have to justify the reason, given that they too have stated their commitment to affordable housing and the significant need for it. As an existing affordable housing provider, I'm told that funding would be available from Homes England with minimal officer time and effort. Feasibility studies and plans for affordable housing on Wentworth Street car park have already been completed and paid for. So what a pity to waste that public expenditure. Now, there's not much shortage of market housing in Moulton Norton, ask Paul Andrews, with another 650 coming forward soon. But there are no sites currently identified for just affordable housing in Ryedale beyond a couple that are already in the pipeline. I know Ryedale House has been allocated in the local plan for years and accepted by a planning inspector, despite not being declared redundant during that time. But would there really be a problem with a changed allocation for a partially used, appallingly energy inefficient building with new owners, no doubt looking to rationalise their estate? Finally, is there a desperate need nationally for affordable housing of various tenures for those people not fortunate enough to be already on the housing ladder? I was recently at the opening of an affordable housing development in Kirby Moorside, and I was told that for 9 houses there were 200 applicants. There was also a development in Cornwall, a bit of a distance from us, where there were 400 applications for 1 house. That, to me, indicates the need. And this isn't about council estates, which some people seem to get into mind as soon as we talk about affordable housing, because these were all about people who were earning less than 80,000. So we're talking about our professional people in Ryedale. In fact, virtually everybody who's sort of under 40 or so and hasn't been fortunate enough to have the bank of mum and dad to add to their the fortune. So there is a desperate need for affordable housing. We own suitable land. We have the ability and authority to leave a legacy to our district before Ryedale disappears into Greater North Yorkshire. Now, I know time is tight, but I think we can at least try. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, would you like to say anything as seconder of the amendment? Okay, thank you. So we have any debate on the subject, Councillor Burr?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and in a way, it's really disappointing that it's come so late in the day. So the first thing that I need to say, although this particular site is allocated, I personally did not vote for it. As the ward member, I didn't vote for it. And the reason that I didn't vote for it was because I feel that the infrastructure in Malton stroke Norton, because I do see them as, although they have different names, they do integrate very well together, just cannot cope. We've just seen Broughton Rise, Broughton Manor being built, and we've just seen the other estate being built. And Malton, you know, is struggling with the impact. I think that what has to be said here is that the good people of Malton and Norton totally understand that people need places to live, and I'm sure the good people in Pickering and Kirkby and Helmsley, we all know that there's a shortage. There's been a total and utter underspend from government to provide housing, and this hasn't been sustainable over many years. Our council houses were all sold, and unfortunately this has led us into this situation, this tragic situation, as to where we are. But having said that, we need to come back to what has been proposed tonight. We have got an allocation which I personally feel is very unfair, and I feel that too much pressure and strain is put on Malton and Norton. However, that was not the total councillor's view, and it went through that Malton and Norton should absorb all the houses. And we have got an application coming in, and it's Councillor Keel's ward, so forgive me for stealing your thunder if you want to add this in, but you know, there is going to be probably 500 houses coming in plus coming into Norton, which will again exacerbate what we've got. Having said that, we should be proactive and we should look forward to trying to do things. But why would we do something when we have got houses coming? I know they aren't affordable, Councillor Potter, and I know we need them, but we have got a huge significant amount of houses coming into the area and that have been built. So I think for the infrastructure problems that we are facing, and I don't want to sound parochial, but I'm sure when you've all been through Malton and Norton, you understand the problems that there are. I honestly believe that we absolutely need affordable, but we need affordable all over. Not everybody comes here to this area. You know, people need affordable in Pickering, in Helmsley, in Kirkby. We need them all over. And I'm just really worried, although there's quite a lot of it that I do support. So at this moment in time, I am quite uneasy about it. And if it goes through tonight, which it probably will go through, it will be interesting to have, you know, a more debate, obviously, at full council. So I'm probably a lone voice speaking here. I want to reiterate, I do support affordable housing, but I have got to think about the most complaints and the most problems that we are suffering in Malton stroke Norton. And it's all about traffic and problems. So I think that it's a balance. It's not easy, you know, it's something that we have to grapple with, but it's just come quite late in the day. But I do think there is a lot of merit in what has been said. However, I'm not sure tonight that I can support it. I need to have a think about this, and I need to have a probably a different debate when I'm sure it will get passed tonight and it comes to full council. So it's not that I completely disagree or dislike what you're saying, but you know, I have to think about just the demands on, you know, what would happen. And because it is so central to our town centre, it's not on the outskirts, just the slight outskirts. It's right in the thick of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll put this amendment to the vote shortly, but I'd just like to make a few comments. I mean, I think my understanding for the new council is that one of their priorities is to create more affordable housing. There's I don't know about the rest of the county, but certainly in Ryedale we do have a shortage and we struggle to do that. I do agree it shouldn't all be in Malton Norton, but then Malton Norton is are the principal towns, or one town, I think, as Councillor Bear's already said, and there is a definite need. So I am supportive of this proposal. I think the other key factor is that because of the demographic in Ryedale particularly, we have a shortage of extra care centres for our older people, and I think there's a real need for those. So I think if something like that could go on one of these sites, that would be very beneficial to this community. I do appreciate the issues about infrastructure and traffic, but there are ways of negotiating to get some of that infrastructure delivered early on in developments, as I think it will probably be the case with the Norton Road development when that actually does go through planning. And you know, the Ryedale House site, this site is ideally placed really to get people out of the town rather than coming into the town, because they can go straight off onto the A64 if they need to, and it's not too far. The benefit of both sites really is that they're quite central to the town, so people can actually walk. And I know we need to maybe do some more publicity about encouraging people to walk, but I just think they would be very beneficial to the communities that we have in Ryedale and the growing community. So that's my view. Would you like to come back as seconder, Councillor Clark?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, there are no plans to shut Ryedale House, no plans to close it, no plans to do anything like that. And this is just, if you like, a paper exercise to set our what we would like to happen in the future, if that is what the new council decides to do. If we can sort of say, as people from Ryedale, you know, we'd quite like to support some smaller developments of affordable housing that people can afford to live in. It's also worth mentioning that we're quite close to some schools here. The majority of students, if the school is within a mile, will walk. If it's more than 2 miles, students of all ages will generally be going by car or bus. And we are nicely within the sort of everybody's going to walk area here, which is, I mean, we're talking about the traffic and infrastructure. We've got the infrastructure here and people follow the infrastructure. You look at house prices next to a school, people are always wanting to move in next to the school because it's where they can take their kids. We've already got that infrastructure here, and it would seem a really sensible thing to say, well, if that is what happens in the future, I think we should be pushing for it to be affordable so that families can actually live here and young people can live here. Yeah, I think I've covered everything.
Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Only a couple of quick things, really. I'd love to have been able to put forward a site in Pickering for affordable housing, but we don't have a site in Pickering that Ryedale District Council owns that's big enough other than Ropery House, and I don't think we get too many on that. I think the indicative yield for sites that have come forward in this iteration of the local plan, I don't know what the numbers are, but having sat there for many hours looking at all the all the sites coming forward, there are an awful lot of new houses already planned, market houses planned in Malton and Norton that will go into the local plan. So I believe that these two sites, Wentworth Street and this site, would represent a very minor number. But the fact remains that we own these sites, so we are able to submit them. And that's the key thing. And really, they are absolutely ideal for affordable housing, particularly Wentworth Street, because right in the middle of the town, the bus services, the train services are excellent without having to have cars. There are all sorts of reasons. And just a final point, if we want, or if the chair would prefer to take the vote on these three different issues separately, that might be helpful, because I really don't see that the Wentworth Street car park can be too much of an issue. And I think the approximate number was about 20 houses on there, which is fairly minimal. I did have a number, but I can't remember. The number 2 just requests that it goes to North Yorkshire Council anyway. And then number 3 is perhaps slightly more contentious because it depends what the future of Ryedale House is. But anyway, I shall leave that one with you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I think we could probably take 1 and 2 together and take 3 separately. To be honest, I would rather take them all together. I think, I think it's simpler, but yeah, let's do it all together. I think it makes more sense to do it all together. So, so the amendment's been put, seconded, and we have debated it. So, could we take the vote, please? So, those in favour of the amendment, please show. We're doing this by hand. Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Do you want me to do it by on here? Yeah. Okay. Got that? Those against? Oh, sorry, is it working? No, we're doing it with the machine. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Burke. Okay, thank you.
That's 3 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So the amendment is passed. So I think we can go straight on to the substantive motion as amended. Well, then I don't think we need a further debate on that matter. So yeah, please vote now. Thank you.
That's 3 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that's also carried. Okay.
Explain the process now, please. Does that go to
So that will go to council because it's a recommendation from
and
policy
what
resources.
to council?
Sorry
To put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. 23rd. Yeah, the 23rd of February. So thank you. Okay, moving on. We now move to item 13, which is the relocation of residual grant funding by Pickering Town Community Interest Company, CIC, I should say so quicker, from Newbridge Park to the community park in Pickering. I think, Craig, you're going to...
I am, yes. Thank you, Chair.
I'm looking over there and you're already there. Thank you.
Evening, members. So this report is to ask Policy and Resources Committee to approve the reallocation of existing Pickering Town Community Interest Company grant funding of £61,750 from Newbridge Park activity identified in the PTCIC's business plan to the Pickering Community Park to support development of a pump track as a community facility for the people of Pickering and the wider Ryedale area, and to allow the continuation of support towards the development of cycling and outdoors related activity in the town. At P&R on the 17th of March 2022, the council awarded PTCIC a grant of £175,000 to develop Pickering as a capital of cycling, funding originally ring-fenced for community initiatives in Pickering. To date, the PTCIC have utilised some of the funding to develop and deliver a new marketing brand for the town, a new visitor website for Pickering, and the appointment of an operations manager to oversee the activity and to help attract further funding to develop activity earmarked within the PTCIC's business plan. One key piece of activity contained within the PTCIC's business plan was to develop Newbridge Park as a facility for cycling and outdoors recreation, which included the development of a pump track. However, discussions with the landowner unfortunately have not resulted in a beneficial agreement for the group to acquire a lease for use of the land, ultimately equating to too big a risk for the PTCIC to manage. Given Pickering Town Council's wish to develop the community park, which is an area of public land adjacent to Newbridge Park, with further recreational infrastructure, an area of land at the community park has been identified for the development of a pump track at this location, depicted in item 6.7 of the report. Also, concurrent to discussions around the development of such a facility, Pickering Town Council recently consulted with local residents on the proposal for a skate park development at the community park, with 74% of responses supportive of this type of recreational facility. Further to this consultation, and after looking at the added benefits a pump track will provide, PTC, Pickering Town Council, have approved the use of the land at the community park for the development of a pump track, which will cater for multi-users, and once built, Pickering Town Council will manage the facility as their own asset. Initial quotes obtained for the required works have identified that such a facility could be built for the level of funding needed to be reallocated, subject to necessary planning approvals. So the request of members of this committee is that one, the existing grant funds made available to PTCIC for Newbridge Park activity totalling £61,750,000 of the £175,000 previously awarded be made available to PTCIC to fund a new pump track, associated signage and marketing and promotion of the facility at the Pickering Community Park. And secondly, the grant is drawn down from the existing £175,000 of previously allocated in the capital reserves for community use in Pickering. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Do we have questions? Councillor Burr.
Has any money to date been drawn down?
Yes.
Oh, thank
Yes,
you. That was
yeah.
very quick.
It has,
How
of the
much is-
£175,000, £44,000 have been drawn down, and that's been utilised on branding for the town, a new website, salaries for the operations manager, other marketing activity, and bits and pieces like IT software and hardware.
Further questions? No? Okay. Do we want to debate this? From my point of view, sorry, Councillor Bowe, I'll let you go first.
Yes. So I think as a council that we should commend and support Pickering, because I think that tourism in Pickering is really high, and if only Malton and Norton had tourism like Pickering, it would be great, but they're different. I think Pickering have been really forward thinking with this, and I think that it's very similar to a project that we're trying to do on Malton Town Council. We're thinking about things like this, and recreation is very, very important at the moment. People's mental health is really suffering and has got increasingly worse since COVID. And I think that this council has always supported cycling and is trying really hard to increase that facility throughout Ryedale. To me, really, we shouldn't be having a debate about this, only to congratulate them, because the money has already been allocated. So it's not a case of saying, should we support them, shouldn't we? We've already, in principle, said that we really like this and we are behind you. So I would like to say nothing else, but I'd like to move that we give this money because it's been allocated, it's for them. They are proving that they are moving forward. They are very active, and as has been said in the report, if they can't find one way to do it, they will find another way to do it. So I can only commend them and say good luck, and here's the money.
Councillor Burr. Anything else, Councillor Clark?
Just as a technical question in terms of sort of due diligence and whatever, the PTCIC will be responsible for all the reports and making sure that this is all right. We don't need to ask for any of that. We can just allocate this and that's all going to be covered. I've just got memories of the Norton Skate Park and the necessity to get that right.
Craig, would you like to just answer that one?
I can, yes. So the actual grant agreement is in place at the moment. So we do have oversight of expenditure, and that's done on a piecemeal basis as and when expenditure presents itself. So we'll have obviously due diligence over activity. Obviously, a development of this size will have to go through planning, obviously. So that will obviously go through the relevant committee, and then if that's obviously successful, then you know the project there is there to support.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Burr's comments. I think this is an excellent scheme, and I do agree that the committee, the CIC that's been doing this work in Pickering, I think it's a great ambition to make Pickering into a cycling town, and it does fit in really well with other things, the cycle pass that the council have delivered. But it's the fact that when things haven't worked out, when you didn't get a grant that they applied for, they didn't just think, oh, well, what do we do now? They found another way of doing it, as Councillor Burr said, and I think that's really to be commended. So they've got a track record, and yes, I completely agree. I'm happy to second that we just we do this, and we recommend this to full council on the 26th again. So all those in favour, really? Sorry, Councillor Clark, have you come back to another question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to just make a little statement that I think it's really good that we're putting something towards young people and actually getting people, something to do in Pickering, because there's a severe lack of things to do for, well, anybody under about 25, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we can probably put that straight to the vote, and I think
we're just recording for just absolutely for the purposes of clarity that Councillor Potter's declared an interest in this item.
Okay.
We did do that at the beginning, but I think some people weren't in the room at that point because of his directorship of the community interest company. So that would be the same actually for the next item as well. I think it is the next item. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Benny.
Just so that it's on the record, since I forgot to press my recording thing before.
Okay, so I think we probably can take that by general affirmation, as there's only 3 of us voting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, we do to exempt Part B items, but please could I ask the committee for a short break at this point? I will be 2 seconds, but I just need to visit the bathroom, so we could just have a short break. That would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence, members. Moving on to item 14, we need to move exempt because the two further items, 15 and 16 on the agenda, are financially sensitive. So I'm happy to move exempt from the chair if I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. All those in favour, please show. We better do this properly. Thank you. So that was unanimous. So we can move on now to item 15, which is around the proposal to construct the new livestock market at Eden Business Park, which is on pages 157 to 248. That's a very long section of the agenda. Howard, I believe you're presenting this to us. Thank you.